You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast for a show with many little gems included. It's going to be we're going all over the place today. We've got the 100, we've got Hales retiring, World Test Championship points controversy, Australia naming a preliminary World Cup squad, West Indies beating India, and a bit more. I'm excited to get through it. I'm joined by Ross. Ross, you'll also have noted that Misbah and Inzamam are back in the game with a special cricket committee being set up in Pakistan. That's a good way to start the show. Are you looking forward to what those big brains of cricket come up with?
Yeah, it's not the first time that they've been involved, and it's kind of a bit of a. We talk about Pakistan cricket with a lot of love, I think, typically, but I think even the most ardent Pakistani fan would sit there and say that the way in which they run their cricket team is pretty insane sometimes. It's sometimes a massive, we're almost like they're constantly playing a game of Yahtzee, and they're just seeing like what's going to come out on the dice this time. Shaheen Afridi, you're opening the batting this week. Okay, fine, let's see how that happens, right? And yeah, some nepotism. Yeah, some nepotism obviously happens along the way, which is unsurprising, I suppose, when the head of selectors is Inzamam Haq, and some of his relatives end up playing. But yeah, ultimately, Pakistan cricket is always a fun thing to follow, and I look forward to seeing what they come up with.
I wanted to get that in first because I think we want to capture that development early in its cycle because we know it's going to come good later on. It's like when a random new character drops into your favourite TV series, you trust the creators, the writing team behind it, that character is going to have an arc that affects how things play out. So even if right at the beginning, there's not that much drama, it's a quiet entrance, later on you're getting a dividend. Before we get into the rest of the show, quick word for our sponsor, our friend at manscaped.com. We can give you 20% off plus free shipping if you go over to manscaped.com and use the code Cricket Pod. I personally would recommend getting yourself the Performance Package 4.0. That's what they sent us, and I'm very pleased with the results, as I'm sure is Ross. But there's a whole load of other male grooming options that you can get yourself involved in. And once again, you can get yourself 20% off plus free shipping with the code Cricket Pod. So head there. It's in the show notes if you want the link because you're lazy or you can't type or whatever, and get involved. Ross, the 100 is underway, and it's been a pretty good start on the men's side of the tournament. Last year, a fair bit of criticism went the way of the comp, at least the men's comp, because well, frankly, a lot of the games were a bit one-sided or didn't build to crescendos. Not the case over the first week of this year's comp, as we kicked off with a game that went down to the last two balls. Daniel Sands pinning Tyrmal Mills in that one. Two nights later, Oval Invincibles, or maybe it was the night after, actually. I think it was a double header on the second match. The night after, Oval Invincibles win with one ball remaining and 7 wickets down. Southern Brave, then they overcome the Welsh Firemen by 2 runs. Another last ball thriller there. And last night, the pièce de résistance of the 100, the greatest 100 match of all time, a tie between Oval Invincibles and the Firemen. Tom Abel celebrating early, a dive to make his ground by Tom Curran, a split screen. Literally, Ross, there was one frame in it. The whole match came down to one frame. It has been a pretty good tournament so far on the men's side.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I completely agree with your kind of upfront piece around that. It actually hasn't been that good of a men's competition, right, over the last kind of 2 seasons. And actually having closer games and having kind of surprise performers as well, Jack, I think has been kind of added to it. I think we can constantly just expect Joss Buttler to always be pretty much number one in terms of batting, regardless of what competition he's in. But actually there's been some standout performers that, you wouldn't typically expect. Chris Jordan with the bat, really bringing it home and showing... showing his kind of credentials to fit into the England ODI World Cup squad somehow. You've had some big innings and just one that's gone on so far, right? Because of the rain, etc., has been quite affected. But Matt Short impressed, Harry Brook impressed. Lou Deploy, but I'd be most impressed with Luke Wells. So I think he's been really, really well in the lineup. And you're kind of looking at this competition, and hopefully, where there has been people pull out of the competition, a real opportunity to put yourself in the franchise shop window as well as the England shop window as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the real strengths of the 100 from an English cricket point of view. Obviously, you've got the Blast with 133 matches, but only actually a relatively limited number of those are broadcast by Sky. Now, I know you can find the streams and watch the rest, but people are lazy, and B, the quality of broadcasting is different. Obviously, if it gets pumped through onto the BBC or it's done by Sky, you see, generally speaking, a better quality product there, and it does put people in the shop window for other comps or for England. I've actually quite enjoyed. I liked it last year. Went along to quite a few games, and I'm planning to go to a couple this week. But look, let's be honest, it is better for having some games where there's genuine jeopardy with 5 balls to go. And it felt like a lot of the time last year, teams were kind of going through the motions a little bit. Have you had a favourite match so far? Is there one that stands out? I mean, like, obviously the tie is
pretty spectacular.
Tom Curran.
It's pretty,
yeah.
And Tom Curran kind of reinventing himself as a kind of a lower order hitter is quite a nice little narrative that I didn't expect when he first came onto the scene. But maybe not a match, but actually I'm very, very impressed that Shaheen Afridi, staying with the Pakistani kind of vibe, has brought his first ball beauties to the 100. And Welsh Fire not being a total disaster is actually really quite encouraging. You never want a competition, especially with the limited teams in it, to always have someone who the dunce team. You don't want someone who's every single time you've got an absolute banker. And it was not even like a banker in terms of, oh, that's a 20-run win. It was a hammering nearly every single time. And what they've got here, and the team that they've built, is Mike Hussey, the guy in charge, with Harris Ralph in the lineup as well. It's fearsome, and I think that's great. And then you still get people who contribute along the way, and they're no longer a laughing stock, which is nice.
No, they're actually. I mean, I think they're top of the women's comp, and they are sitting in 3rd place with a win, a loss, and a tie in the men's comp. And I think actually, having seen them play 3 times, one of the more impressive teams. They're actually pretty handy, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they did come back and finish in the top 3. Which would be a pretty impressive,
remarkable rise.
Yeah. It'd be like Tiger Woods when he came back to win the Masters.
It's not going to be Tiger. It's not Tiger Woods-esque, is it, mate? Come on.
I'd say. I mean, it's probably about that level. It's kind of like Norwich getting relegated from the Premier League and then coming back up the next season. So done. Maybe it's a bit more like that. Yeah, maybe it's a bit more like that. The women's comp's obviously been underway at the same time. It's suffered a little bit more from the rain. The women's competition, I think, half the matches have been rained off. Obviously, they happen before the men's game, so if there is rain, they get the chop, and they might fit a men's match in later, which I think was the case in the game where. Is that the one that was 40 balls each? Manchester were chasing and couldn't quite get there. Was that the one where Luke Wells did go ballistic? It might have been.
It was. So I think ultimately this is obviously a problem that's been raised, right, in terms of the women's game being curtailed in favour of the men's game, and I'm not sure if that is kind of ECB, whether it's the broadcasters or whatever it is, but there is a big part on making sure that the men's game gets pretty much the full allocation, right, and the women's game just gets chopped. And as you say, like when you're kind of looking for the standout performers, actually the teams pretty much played one game each, right? There's not been the teams to come in and do what they need to do.
Yeah, so far, I think, I mean, it's teams have basically played once or 0 times in the case of London Spirit. Welsh Fire might have squeezed 2 of their matches in, so it's a little bit more unknown on that side, and we've probably seen more. Well, we have definitely seen more one-sided games. So I would say that one's yet to fully get going. At the top of the table there, we've got Welsh Women's Fire Women, whichever way around you want to put that, with Southern Brave and Manchester Originals following up. We've seen some pretty good performances, though, particularly with the ball, including today, hot off the press, Fire Morris, 5 for 11, which is pretty good going on 11 balls, isn't it? To 1 in 4 balls be taking a wicket, that's some strike rate. I mean, I was looking at Stuart Broad, obviously retired, 1 in 56 balls in Test cricket, so that's 1 in 4 is a lot better. Have you enjoyed that?
Yeah, and I think it's always nice to see someone like Sophie Eccleston, who is a brilliant player, get eclipsed, right? She took 4 for 11 in that game. Gets beaten with better figures of 5 for 7, which is just absolutely tremendous. And yeah, I think the 100's strength has been what it's done for the women's game over the last kind of 2 seasons. Here, it's got off to a stuttering start, and has highlighted some of the way in which the game still has to grow and still has to develop, right? And there does need to be kind of some alternatives around what happens. We also seen kind of some limited batting opportunities as well. I think Mandhana hit the first 50 of the tournament this year. But yeah, there's still a lot to come. And yeah, hopefully with the weather set to improve over the next kind of 3 weeks of the competition, we should see plenty of cricket.
Yeah, just a correction on that. Fire Morris, it was 11 dot balls. So 16 balls bowled, 11 dots, 7 runs and 5 wickets. Decent. That's a good day. It's a good day at the office. Mm-hmm. As Birmingham has been a little bit disappointing on the women's side. I think they played a couple of matches and yet to get going. But there's plenty of time to go. There's plenty of time to go in the tournament. It's sort of weirdly early in it, but it's anyway, whatever. It's not the only 100 news we've got though, because as good as the start has been, it is diminished somewhat, I think, by changes that are coming up to some of the squads. You mentioned Shaheen and Harris Ralph. Both of them are set to depart next week to go and play an ODI series, to be replaced by Lockie Ferguson and Matt Henry. Now, Lockie Ferguson, he's pretty entertaining. He's not quite Shaheen, but that's good. Matt Henry, slightly more run-of-the-mill, I would say. If you're replacing Harris Ralph with Matt Henry, I'm probably less likely to go there. And then Sunil Narayan obviously leaving as well, slightly later in the tournament, to be replaced by Adam Samper, who himself is quite entertaining. Hopefully he wears his signature 420 shirt for the Oval Invincibles. Ross, bigger picture, I suppose, on this. Is this an issue for the 100 that players are chopping and changing? Will it affect the competition? Does it diminish your enthusiasm for the product as a whole?
Yeah, so I think it's quite a difficult one because I think franchise leagues around the world are becoming more and more popular. You're trying to fit in international cricket, and it's always going to be challenging, right? And we saw with Major League Cricket, Sunil Narayan, as you just mentioned, actually didn't come back for T20 finals day. So it's not just a problem for the 100, it's a problem for kind of different competitions that are happening. I think in terms of where the ECB go with it, I think there probably is kind of considerations that they need to kind of go, right, well, how can we start to protect our stars? Typically, that is paying them more money, right? Ultimately, they're going to go where the fattest check ultimately is to do the same thing. And I think when it's probably a little bit arrogant sometimes for England to kind of say, well, we're the cricketing nation. We know exactly what we're doing. We're really good competition, and people love being over here in the summer. It's kind of rained all summer. It's not been the best of cricket, and actually there are more opportunities to choose from, and they're going to have to think around what happens in that space. I've been surprised as well that the England players have actually come back and played so soon after the test matches as well. I thought England would be kind of a bit more protective, but I guess, Ben Duckett, Harry Brook are kind of just like, you know what, I just want to crack on with it and get on with it. So I think there are going to be changes anyway. The rumours are that this there was a slip of the tongue, wasn't there, by one of the directors who was interviewed and said the 100's final season. I don't think it's going to be the final season on it, but I definitely think there's changes over the next couple of years to make it more relevant and protect that window to make sure people are playing.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few things they can do there, aren't there? I mean, like, as you say, they can up the fees paid. I mean, the English summer traditionally has been that England have been quite lucky. Well, they are lucky in that they're the only Northern Hemisphere team that play regularly through the whole of the summer. And that means that you generally have pretty good available. Even in county cricket, you get quite a lot of good players because there's not a lot of international cricket to clash with it, and most other nations' domestic leagues happen at different points in the year. Major League Cricket coming into the fray earlier in the summer certainly mixed that up a little bit, and obviously at the end of the summer you have the CPL with its window, which starts late August. So there's some thinking potentially that will need to happen around how they fit the 100 in and what they do. And I mean, like the slip of the tongue there was quite funny, but there have been rumours talking from a bigger picture about where English cricket will go with its franchise competition. And the latest thinking is that, and it's kind of funny that this is what they've come up with, that apparently they want to rebrand the 100 as the English Premier League, switch it to a T20 competition, expand it to 18 teams with a team based at each county venue around the country, and introduce relegation and promotion as an aspect in the tournament. Now, as the I guess the negative points to this, you lose whatever branding you had with the 100. Probably not the end of the world on that one. And the other casualty would be the T20 Blast, which would evaporate and cease to be a comp in this proposed model. Further advantages, and I think this is probably what they're angling for to some extent, is that this would be done with a view to involving private investment in English T20 cricket. Whether that's an advantage or not, I suppose depends on kind of what you're into in a way, but it's certainly a way to bring more money into cricket. And if paying your players is an issue, well, there are a few guys who own franchise teams in India that will probably help you out with that one. So there's that. What I mean, like, what's your take on some of these ideas? I mean, like, it's not really a formal proposal. It's sort of stuff that's been leaked through a couple of Telegraph articles. I think one in the Times. Two I suppose friendly journalists. Would you be happy with this change, or do you instinctively think it's a bad idea?
I think it just, again, reeks of the problems that have kind of existed in the ECB for a number of years, right, in terms of the lack of strategic direction for it. And I think that this is where you run into kind of how you align your organizational purpose with the strategy you're trying to deliver, and then actually being engaged with your fans and obviously the users of the product. And I think that you've seen cricket in general probably suffer with that. I mean, even the IPL, probably, as we said, the most successful league on the planet, has its drawbacks, right, in terms of kind of its strategic thinking and what it's trying to achieve sometimes. And the ECB have not covered themselves in glory, I don't think. They've kind of alienated an awful lot of fans in the way in which they did it. They alienated a lot of the county game as well. They spent an awful lot of money on it. So I think there's probably a sunk cost element to this as well, Jack, around, actually, do they part with what this is going on, or are they kind of being more populist with it? What kind of what's actually going to be the feedback from the Telegraph readers, from the Times readers, etc., and kind of start to shape what they're doing from that perspective. And I'm not quite sure that's the right way to go about it. Actually engaging with the counties, engaging with the players' unions, etc., is actually really important for this kind of stuff, and to try and build on some of the success from the 100. I mean, you wouldn't want kind of the women's game to be kind of detrimental or a kind of a side project to this. It has to be up there as a tier one piece as well, and actually lead the way on that front. Otherwise, the other competitions, like the Women's Premier League coming out of India, etc., is going to take it over. And actually, we were the trailblazers on that front, and people want to come and play in that competition, and we need to make sure that we are protecting kind of the good as well as getting rid of the bad.
So I think their plan for that one was to continue the Women's 100 or whatever, the Women's Premier League, but not immediately expand out to 18 teams. So you have your 8 women's hubs, if you like, and they continue to play an 8-team competition expanding out over X number of years to have an 18-team competition. But you go straight to, I think it was an 8-team top divisions, 10-team bottom division men's tournament. So I suppose the 8 teams that are currently in the 100, they stay the same kits, same branding, etc. Same venues, same name. But then you add a bottom division, and I guess you have the Southwest Beasts of Bodmin based out of Taunton. And
I mean, I don't hate the relegation piece. I think that actually makes. I think that makes things really interesting, actually. And would it be the first franchise league to kind of do it? But then would it be the English Premier League and then English Championship, just like in the? Well,
I don't know. I think I actually quite like it. I think it solves the big problem they've got, which is that you're trying to fit 2 massive T20 competitions into one block, and you kind of end up with two that are both sort of not ideal. Like the T20 Blast isn't covered well enough from a broadcasting point of view to make it feel like an elite tournament, even if the quality of cricket's really good. That's just, it's quite a difficult competition to follow. And then on the 100 side, it is sort of jammed into quite a short window, and 8 matches probably isn't enough to work out, for it to really feel like a true sporting contest. Like, we know about the variability in short format cricket. So only to make it shorter and then only play 8 matches, that makes it a little bit of a lottery. And I think if you sort of merge them together in a way, and it definitely isn't going to be popular for county cricket fans, but like looking at it from a slightly more neutral perspective, you get top level cricket at all the grounds. You can have a decent length tournament. You get bigger stars. You have the potential for actual outside investment. You get decent broadcasting. You can probably fit it into a sort of a decent window in the summer so it doesn't overspill, and then you can fit things like the Championship and the One Day Cup around it, and it doesn't mean that you have 3 of your 5 months or 3 of your 6 month summer, 3 months of the period dedicated to effectively one format. Might be better for developing English players. So I think there are actually quite a lot of positives, basically, but we'll see what happens. I think it's an interesting development, and nothing might come of it. Like that's the other point here. Like this is based on sort of a lot of conjecture and stuff. But this is the direction I would go if I were them.
Yeah, I just think we just need to be really careful of the private investment element to it, right? There is a bit here around making sure that we are protecting the game that we know and follow, and also protecting the players that are involved, etc. And the ECB have got former stuff on this, right? Look at Alan Stanford and how that went, right?
Oh,
there has to be real due diligence done, and not just kind of following the pay packet that kind of comes with it. Obviously, last year it was leaked that, private equity firm wants to invest 450 million or whatever it was. And again, we've been down this road before. Be very wary of what goes on and make sure that we do it correctly if we're going to do this, because sometimes it feels a bit of a half-assed approach.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the ECB are known for their due diligence, to put it politely. And even on that though, I think there are ways you could do it. Like, each county that hosts one of these franchises gets a stake in. But
even then, you've seen the problems in the county game, right? You've seen that. Yeah. So if you compare what happens in football and the kind of regulations around that, or the fit and owner tests on directors, actually that is not 100% foolproof either, and I think cricket needs to be really careful on that front. You see what happened with Yorkshire and the problems that are still going on in that space. You see the ECB's lack of action on the IECE report as well, and how that impacts kind of the other counties. Like, at the moment, there is not, and maybe this is harsh, but there feels to me like there's a gap in terms of the leadership that's actually required to make something of what you've suggested, or what's been suggested, actually a success, and more thought and more proper management actually has to go into it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the 100 done. A couple of other things that came out of it, or that have come up recently. Alex Hales has retired from England cricket, goes out on a high with his World T20 win World Cup, whatever it's called. Won the World Cup, didn't he? And he got some runs, kind of like redemption, nice redemption arc for him. He did an interview with Athers, which is worth a listen if you haven't heard it already, where he talks about sort of his thinking behind it. And basically, it comes down to he doesn't have a central contract. He doesn't think he'll get a central contract anytime soon. He's probably not going to go to the World Cup. And there's a lot of money for someone like Alex Hales to earn in what he describes himself as the twilight of his career. Ross, pretty good player when he had his moments, wasn't he?
Yeah, a bit, frustrating talent, I think is probably how we'd go. And obviously some missed opportunities because of some indiscretions along the way. But there's no denying that he's given England fans kind of one of the best moments that they're going to actually follow when it comes to T20 cricket. And that was the trouncing of India at the Adelaide Oval. So there's a lot to be said for that. And yeah, you, on any given day as an opening batsman, again, ticking the boxes on selfless up the top, unbelievably strong down the ground and pulling the ball, and somebody who has kind of maybe not propped up Nottinghamshire. I think they're a pretty good county, but has really led from the front for Nottinghamshire and Trent Rockets most recently, and let alone smashed it all around the world in the Franchise League. So wish him all the best, really. Decent talent.
Yeah, go and earn some cash. And then finally, there's been a bit of a furore about World Test Championship points. Both teams after the Ashes docked quite severely, so they should have ended 28 all after all the tests were said and done, which is a sort of a weird way of doing things, because then they put it through a percentage thing, and then they give you a percentage of points earned, and that's actually the total that is the important one. So 28 points is sort of meaningless in a way. But both teams have lost quite a substantial portion of those points, Ross.
It's madness.
Australia docked, I think, 9, and so they're was it 10 down to 18, and England down to just 10 points, I believe. I might have got those numbers off by 1 or 2.
It's completely farce, isn't it?
Pretty ridiculous. I mean, look, it's a regulation that everybody knew about going in. And you can't really, if you're an England player, complain that you've lost the points, because you did know and you did bowl the overs slowly. But it does make the whole World Test Championship concept a little bit, as you say, it does render it slightly farcical that you basically, by doing this, what you're doing is you're making it likely that a team that just completes its overs in time will finish above a team that was better but took a little bit longer to bowl those overs. And if the whole objective of this exercise is to have a final between the best test team in the world and the second best team in the world, that doesn't seem like a very good idea. No. It is what it is, and I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's really anything England can complain about here, or Australia for that matter, although they did. And then they got a slightly less severe punishment than they would have done had they not complained. So there is that. I don't know. The World Test Championship is not a perfect product,
but I do think that But I do think the slow over rates is definitely a problem in Test cricket. If people were to look back on this Test series, there was overs lost, etc., but people still were thoroughly entertained. You got an awful lot of cricket into the time that was available, etc. But what is really frustrating for me is that it's kind of retrospective, and it hampers the future of the game. It's like when some players get banned. It hampers that side of things, of what is the next competition, what is the next bit of jeopardy, what is the next sporting event. And I think that the World Test Championship I think it's benefited the game, but I do think that this is short-sighted. Like, my view on overs being lost should be punishable by runs actually in the game. Like, make it actually that bit, and you'll soon
immediately.
Yeah, you would. Literally, I think your suggestion around what happened in the stop clock being introduced in baseball, when we talked about that before, like, try some of these things retrospectively, issuing things like the teams are just like, okay, well, whatever, and it's just a bit, again, backwards, and it's not kind of a dynamic way of actually managing kind of the sport. It's still quite archaic, and just kind of reeks of kind of old governance and tradition. So it's not what we need.
That's effectively, you've nailed it there. I think, like, what if this is the way you're going to punish people? what you end up with is a final between the teams that aren't the best teams and slow over rates anyway, because nobody in the game is actually thinking about the long-term impact there. They're trying to win the match. If you do introduce some sort of a penalty for, you know, at the end of every hour, or at the end of every session, or at the end of every day, or at the end of every innings, pretty quickly, I think people would buck their ideas up, so to speak. And I mean, I genuinely think a play clock is the way forward. It would work well, I think, but yeah.
And also thinking about it, it will benefit. I think on our Discord we were talking about it, which you could join going on to patreon.com/the cricket pod, and it was raised that actually this kind of benefits teams playing in the subcontinent, because you're going to play more spinners and actually going to get through some overs, etc. And again, it's one of those things. But for the conspiracy theorist out there, there's one for you to nom on.
Well on. yeah. Cool, Ross. We're going to end part 1 there, and then we will come back with part 2.
Lovely.